And I'm very thrilled to say we are. And anybody that's watching us now live on Facebook and LinkedIn, hello. Anybody that's watching this back through the YouTube or anywhere we share it, hello. And also into our podcast streams, which is very exciting. And it's absolutely right that we do stream this a lot, because what we bring to you in these BIP chats are amazing experts. And let me tell you a little bit about why we do that. So first of all, you might be saying, what's BIP stand for? BIP stands for Business is Personal. And any client that we work with, we always make sure that they have values around that, which means they have diversity of skills, but the commonality of kindness. And they are really passionate about the impact that they have on their clients and their overall values. And when we find those people, we invite them into something called BIP100. And we're creating quite a phenomenal community. So I'm now talking to you in October 21, and we have 74 of these amazing experts. And we ask them if we can interview them and give you, the audience, support in various subjects. And the one today is one that none of us can ignore. And I can say that without exception. We all need to understand sales, and we all need to make sure that our business grows through those skills. And today we're talking about the future of hybrid sales teams in what we are, I don't know how long we can say it, but this new era that we've gone into. So October 21, when you listen to this back a bit further on, we've come out now of the COVID lockdown period, but our businesses have had to adapt a lot, and many ways the pivots have been exceptionally good. Now, a little bit personally here, I am very excited to be talking about sales, because that has always been my career. In 1983, I joined an IT firm in telesales, worked my way through field sales into sales management, and then became a sales director of quite a large IT distributor. So even to this day, I love sales, and not because it is a formula or a process. It just helps me to meet amazing people and hopefully attract them towards us with our values. So two experts that we have here in front of us, Tim Robertson and Steve Saunders. And I'm going to start off by introducing Tim. So Tim has worked in the corporate world for many, many years. He's going to fill in all my gaps here. And he absolutely works with sales management, sales strategy, sales teams around the way that you need to sell, basically, and business develop, and has many qualifications, one of which I do want to really dig into around neuroscience. And Tim, you've asked Steve Saunders, who's also a BIP100 member, which is very exciting, to join us. Can you just introduce Steve and a little bit of your background with Steve and why you've invited Steve?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm sure Steve in a second can fill in the gaps that I've missed out as well. Steve and I met probably, was it 7, 8 years ago, when we were working in a large telecommunications firm that we both were involved with in the sales arena. And although I work really at the ground floor, Steve works at the lofty positions of strategy, which he does a lot these days. And we recently re-met, actually, after all that time. We have lots and lots of experiences together working with this large telco company. And it was recently that we met because of BIP, and we said, my goodness me, it's incredible that you're here. But Steve is an incredible brain, very much a strategist, and I really want to invite him on to give a slightly different view to mine, which is very much more around the ground floor level and the sort of the day-to-day stuff. So Steve, fill in a little bit of gap, would you mind?
Sure. Yeah. So beyond that, I mean, the work that we did together, Tim, was I was fortunate enough to be invited in because of many years working in Salesforce transformation, go-to-market transformation, just the broader picture of how to accelerate ideas into the marketplace and changing work patterns and behaviors. Establishing better ways of working and helping people and teams thrive in that sort of environment. So that, yes, that does touch the strategy. It touches the organization readiness, and it goes down to individual capabilities and readiness to thrive in different situations. So that was and since we worked together, I gambled with my own startup for a while. I joined EY and led global pursuits and their large go-to-market opportunities to accelerate adoption of key ideas in the global market. And for this last year, I've been working in my own capacity, putting a portfolio together, working with clients, and it's really interesting. So BIP, it was just awesome to reconnect with Tim, but also, as you said, Penny, the great people that you brought together in this community. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very lovely to hear that. So let's start, before I sort of really dive into the nitty gritty, what I'd love to understand, Tim, is we're assuming and going to hope that people who are listening in on this are very interested in the sales topic. And can you just give me an idea of when a client approaches you and says they want to work with you? So I know you're working with a large telco at the moment. What is sort of a day in the life of working with you? What is it you would do for them?
Sure, absolutely. The first thing to explain that probably a little bit like Steve, my focus is on large complex sales. So large organizations are trying to sell to other large organizations where the situation is quite complex. So I run a lot of, I facilitate a lot of training programs. I also develop a lot of training programs. So I'm predominantly, Steve and I I've worked predominantly in the telco industry, but also my background means I'm now working with a company that produces equipment that sequence genomes as well. So I'm a toxicologist background, so we developed a clinical selling skills course. But it's really understanding that what's successful about complex, if you like, B2B, business to business transactions, where there's often a myriad of different people you have to connect with and influence, and it's both the strategy of going around that and showing people there's a common language where you can talk together and work as a team. That's one of the key things that I bring to its collaboration. So we bring structure and process around collaboration, but also the skills. So how do you interact with a CEO or a CIO before you go in there? What kind of research do you have to do? And what's the best way to start that communication? And a lot of sales has changed over the years. If you think about the old days of the pressurized salesperson and, the ABCs, always be closing, quite frankly, that is a load of rubbish these days. In fact, I think there was some research done that said the more you close on a complex B2B sale, more likely you are to be shoved out the door. And it's much more subtle than that. And now we've moved away, moved up solution selling, where you're providing a solution to somebody. And they've got a series of problems or challenges. And the next step has been around insight selling, where you're showing your worth to a company or to an individual about their particular situation and knowledge about that as well. So it's moved on a lot. So the kind of deals that Steve and I are involved in range from, 10,000. The largest one I've dealt with is 850 million. So a large corporate deal that we're trying to focus on to secure, and we were really great if we secured it by using different techniques, Penny. Sales is not about pushing somebody off, trying to, thumb screw in somebody into doing something. We've got far too much time to think about, to consider other options. They've probably done their research, things have changed, that kind of stuff. So I normally get involved with helping them think through the process and also the skills.
It's interesting that I remember one takeaway for me was how difficult it is for a company to differentiate in a defendable way, right? Something that's different about them, that is sustainable, that is relevant and important and valuable to the customer, right? And it takes a long time and sometimes a lot of investment. And working with teams, I remember that moment of enlightenment where they accepted that their professional sales behavior was actually a differentiator. And it's quite defendable as well, because you form relationships. And the closer you get towards this insight selling, which is about having an opinion, a point of view that can potentially change or unsettle the predetermined behavior, buying practices and attitudes of the customer, and make them think differently about their problems and how to maximize value from that. And if we're doing that, if you combine that with the hybrid way of working, which we're talking about now as well, forming that level of confidence and comfort to talk and engage is really important. And one of the things we were just had a previous comment about was was the fact that when you're working over this link, I can have 4 books open just out of view of the camera. Whereas if I was to rustle through my briefcase to find that data in a face-to-face meeting, it would make me look as though I'm a monkey.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Sitting online, you can, if you handle it properly, if you are at a human level connecting, and you can also have your information. So you're getting you're deserving of that opportunity to challenge, to use insights and to do it in a respectful and informative way.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You could have so many post-it notes all around you, couldn't you? To help
It just looks as though you're thinking. And
yeah,
then,
no, absolutely. If I was sitting in my office, I'd turn the camera around. You can see some of mine. So that's a really good point you're making there, Steve. So, because I'm really curious about how has this new world changed selling? Because is it for the good? So Tim, when you chose this title, Future of Hybrid Sales Teams, what were you thinking of about that?
I think over the last 18 months or so, and you mentioned the lockdown and getting out of lockdown, we've been forced into this situation working from home, haven't we? Because majority of the world has not been allowed to go out, and that's been for some people a terrible frustration because they're used to going out and seeing people. But my view is it's now become slightly an opportunity as well to revisit, and I'm sure Steve will add to this, the strategy we employ with teams, our sales teams. There's the sales aspect and there's the human aspect as well. What I've found through working with sales teams over the last year or so, coming out of this, and hopefully we're moving out of it, and with vaccination programs we're moving out of it, is there are lessons to be learned about working from home and using, as Steve says. Steve brought up a really good point that working virtually means that I'm 2,000, 3,000 miles away from you guys, and we're still having this conversation. We can do the same with customers. And as Steve said, we can have prompts all around us about the key needs and key problems and challenges our customers have. But the real reason is, I think that companies, and Steve will probably support them, have to really think about how they're supporting people internally. And I know, Steve, you in an earlier conversation talked about BT and the way they prepped you up for home working, because there are two things here, in my view. Yes, we can ask people to work from home, and some companies have now got home contracts. So you no longer go to an office, you actually work from home. Does that alter your mental state? Are you better off working this way? Are you giving everybody your best as opposed to going out and see them? The second aspect is that people by nature, you and I, the three of us met the other evening as in one of your BIP twos. Wonderful they are as well, Penny. Mm-hmm. We got together, and it was just amazing to get together. So we've got now a situation where we've got to have this hybrid, whereas before as you were a field salesperson originally, weren't you? Mm-hmm. So the thought of coming and sitting down here and looking at a screen and talking to people, thought, no, I don't want to do that. What we've learned, though, is it's much more efficient to do it this way. Yeah.
And do you feel the relationship can still be, because we all met online, you trusted and joined BIP100, both of you, by not meeting us. It's beautiful when you get the chance to meet. Do you feel that people need different skills to be able to build trust and relationships online than they did when they were able to sit in an office, shake hands, have a coffee? Do you feel it's a different way of building trust?
And I'll pass over to Steve in a minute, but if you don't mind me, Steve, answering this one first before I pass over to you. I think you do. I think you have to be very much more aware of the nuances of the behavior and what you're seeing in front of you, because I do this day in, day out in the middle of, I've got 9 people online waiting for me now, actually, after we finish this session. You have to look at the behavior, and you have to specifically realize that this is a 2-dimensional thing, and you've got 3-dimensional people. So the way you build rapport and relationship with people has to adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
Now, I've known companies, and I'm working or have been working with a company that only works and sells major deals through this medium. They've never met anybody until they've contracted with them. And then you were talking of 5, 6 million, 20 million deals they're working on.
They could do it that way. And in fact, Steve, you said that when you were working with HP and set up a division for them, it started straight away hybrid back in, what was the date, 1999?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, hybrid for me all the way through. Literally, I worked for German and Italian managers, and we both worked for Swiss and German partners. We worked with clients all around the world, and so it wasn't inherently hybrid. What I would say is there's certain human characteristics that have been ever present. That it's a truism to say that some people are better or worse at connecting and forming and showing genuine interest in others. What happens with this change is that it becomes amplified. So if you're careless about it, it becomes very obvious to people that you're not really. So if I did or didn't attend the office in one of my companies, it might have been occasionally visible. And I had to be careful to make sure, I had to be interested enough to make sure that I made a connection, that I respected the people that I was working with and showed an interest. Really, being in the office doesn't excuse you from that, but it does kind of puts you in a cocoon and creates the impression that because you're in the same room as somebody, that you're somehow connecting with them, and that isn't always the case. So I think what is happening here is this pressure cooker of COVID has made certain long-term patterns much more visible. They've amplified them. And so people do need to tune in to the gaps in their capabilities, their self-awareness, how they communicate with people, how they connect with people, rather than just thinking, well, we're going to go and sit in that office over there and shout each other down for 30 minutes. And we'll have a good old meeting. Well, no, it was never a good old meeting. It was, 80% of the people in that room never had a voice, for instance, and therefore, you do have, as I said, a lot of amplification going on of these tendencies. I'd also go back to what was mentioned about large businesses. Since leaving EY, most of my work has been with startups, because in this new way of working, it's a huge leveling opportunity. Because they are expected to behave with the professionalism and the global reach and the structure and methodologies that the big boys and girls are playing with. And if they don't know how to, they got to learn, because the opportunity is there to participate in very advanced ecosystems and very large pieces of business. But you could lose out on that if you don't emulate some of that professionalism. So now is a leveling opportunity that exists for those small businesses. And I'm finding that some of the future leaders in their markets are embracing that and taking that opportunity.
That's very good. That is interesting. And so in terms of the demands and requests made of you, if I start with Tim, since when we went into lockdown in March 20, and people started to lift their head and communicate and say, how are we going to deal with this? What was a typical sort of pivot or need that a business was needing to go through?
I think, and as you probably gathered, I run a lot of sort of workshops, and both process workshops and skills workshops around sales, excuse me. I think the key thing is that everybody was thrown into this environment 2020, March 2020, didn't know what to expect. So there's a lot of status quo, static work of thinking, how do we work through this? What's going to happen? This uncertainty, this volatility, there's confusion, there's ambiguity, all those VUCA things they keep on talking about. And it took 6 months before people really then began to say, well, everybody's at home. Well, it looks like people are going to be staying at home, so we need to put something in place. So my work was put on hold basically for 6 months until people began to realize that you can actually do stuff online. So I did some online, and now virtually some of the companies I'm talking to will only do online. And of course, we've had to adapt, as facilitators of these workshops and as consultants. We're now working a lot more like this, and quite honestly, for me, it's a lot easier because there's less travel. And what I'm hearing is that from the people I'm engaging with, one lady I was talking to today, based in Madrid, Mumbai. Based in Mumbai, she spends 3.5 hours in the morning, 3.5 hours in the evening commuting.
Oh,
so now she's at home. She's going, yes, I've got 7 hours back.
amazing.
So that's the positive side. People got more time. But also the negative side, I think, around that is you've got children. I mean, in the lockdown, you had children away from schools, trying to work and look after the kids as well. And hopefully that's going to sort itself out.
Yeah. But I think we do need a bit of variety in our lives as well, to just get up, sit at a desk and go back to bed. We do need a bit of variety. And Steve, something that really intrigues me is the brand representation aspect of this, because, you know, God, I remember when I was in the IT industry, remember the IBM at the time in the early 90s, you know, they even controlled you down to the suit and tie you wore, you know, the brand representation out there. And now, you know, some people have not got homes ready for this. How are companies coping with that?
Well, the answer to that is I don't think necessarily it's being done consistently, which is maybe an opportunity for, again, differentiation. What we're talking about there is holistic impact of new ways of working. I mean, there's various things that I'm paying attention to, because what happened initially, and there's this sort of disaster mindset or instinct that kicks in when something, because we don't think ahead for disaster scenarios.
Yeah.
You know, we don't actually know what's going to happen when a disaster lands. So what actually happened in my work environment was that people turned their attention to the instinctive reaction their customers would have, which was to run for the woods and protect their cash flow. So there was a lot of effort required to keep the customers doing what they were doing already and keep the cash coming into the business. The cost focus for the customers, reducing cost, the different forms of value. And then suddenly they realize, hey, I'm a lot more available, and my people are more available, and my customers are more available. So actually, we can do a lot more talking. And it was true to say that people that would often be on jets flying to Buenos Aires or India or somewhere were now stuck at home. But I could get a call with them at 24 hours notice. It was fantastic for me, you know. And so we were a lot more agile and actually a lot better off, they realized. And then we get to this point of holistic impact, where that sort of 2 hours commute through the London tube system to get to the office and 2 hours to get home, by which time you're supposed to be refreshed and happy for your children, to have half an hour to read a story before they go to bed and bath them, and then that's it. It now translates into an extra 4 hours at home. And what are you doing with that?
Yeah.
What is the company helping you to do with that? And are they paying attention properly to the holistic impact of this new opportunity, which includes helping people to understand their visual impact on the company's brand, because the company is responsible for that. You know, if their people are having customer calls from the kitchen with fried eggs cooking in the background, or do they have an environment like Tim's set up, albeit that it's just within camera range, which helps to professionalize the impression that's created for the company. Mentally and physically, how do your people feel, right? How are they feeling after 10 weeks in this situation, right? And can you maybe think of ways of helping to prop up their mental well-being and their physical well-being while they would have been on an underground train? And so is this a bad thing that they're now not, you know, they're not putting that time in at the office, or is it an opportunity to deal with the holistic impact of the business? And one of the businesses that I'm involved with is codifying the ideal way of working in different sales situations and delivery situations. They're codifying that into easy to use systems, so that anybody who's involved in a given use case for the company, they know exactly what they should be doing. Now, isn't that obvious, right? It's like a playbook or a cookbook that says, actually, in this situation, this is what we'd like you to be sharing with the customer, and we'd like you to follow this customer journey. But that wasn't done before, you know. But now that we're in this situation, they recognize the obligation that exists for companies to think about that holistic impact that their people should be having on the customers.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and all that whole psychological safety element as well. So we've talked a little bit around, obviously, well, some of it's the same and some of it's changed. Company responsibility, our own personal responsibility. if I get into some of the skills aspects of this, and I like the fact, Steve, you've mentioned, small businesses as well. There's a commonality that we all use, and that is LinkedIn, right? Whether we're a small business or a big sales lady at a corporate. Tell me, Tim, about that sort of the relationship you feel people are having with LinkedIn, pre and post, but I imagine it's now.
Absolutely. I think people realise that this aspect of digital sales, including LinkedIn, around become much more important. And I think people are going to realise the social selling aspect of things, and we'll come back to that word selling. LinkedIn is an amazing platform for research, for getting contacts, all that kind of thing. But if I'm really honest, the majority of people don't know how to use it well.
Yeah.
And they try and pitch far, far too early. They'll connect with you, often sending out a blank connection to you. And then as soon as you accept it, they'll send a pitch message to you. Are you interested in doubling your revenue or something like that, which is not what we do in a networking event. If you think about what we'd actually do, because it's a networking site.
Yep.
And it's a brilliant networking site. In a networking site, we wouldn't pitch, we wouldn't walk into a room and say, hey, my name's Tim, and I do this, and I'm brilliant at that. People would just turn around and look at you and avoid you. And that's what happens on LinkedIn sometimes. So it's about building that relationship. And it's no different to when introducing yourself and then getting to know people, or picking up. I might turn around to Steve, and this is trying to Steve, my goodness, Steve, that's a beautiful background. Is that a virtual background? That kind of thing you can do on LinkedIn as well. I noticed this about your profile, to build that relationship, both on LinkedIn and also we're talking virtually here. And some of the skills element of it is still about the human nature of things.
But people have lost a lot of the art of conversation, haven't they? And, I remember Thomas saying, and anybody that's watching this is wondering how I've kicked Thomas out of here. He's had to go to a very last minute appointment. So it's usually Thomas and Penny on the sofa. But, Thomas I said, I think about 20 years ago, conversations lead to transactions. But the thing is, so many people have really put into this broadcast an automated way of being, haven't they?
They have, absolutely. They think, and it goes down to whether it's quantity or quality again. And the people who are really good at it are good conversationalists and pick up nuances of things quite naturally. So they'll look at things and they'll say, oh, that's an interesting topic, but they'll do it genuinely.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a LinkedIn message that said, Tim, look, hi, Tim, look at your profile. Looks like you're doing great things. Is that personal?
No, I know.
And every time I see that, I laugh. Yeah, that's really been, so it's got to be personalized. And I think, Steve, you probably agree with this. Every new interaction has to be highly personalized. If we learn anything about that, it's got to really connect with that person and really understand how you can have a conversation, back to what Thomas was saying, with that individual about something that they care about or they're interested in.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think we're all just impatient, aren't we? And it's just throw away connections just to get to the one that finally comes in as a numbers.
Just having a connection with another human being is a very special moment. If somebody opens your message or engages in a dialogue with you, that's actually really nice. Yeah. So doesn't it make sense that you should be a bit curious about them and show that you're interested? Yeah. And in actual fact, I had this conversation with Thomas earlier on about the fact that we've become increasingly isolated in our thinking. We'll often sit at home and we'll think over a subject. So that by the time we have a conversation about it, we end up throwing our opinion at somebody else and then going quiet until they throw their opinion at us, and then we'll throw another opinion back at them. Yeah. But the thing I love about Tim, for instance, and it's in its nature, actually. And what I really wanted to ask you, depending when we switched on the cameras earlier on, is to tell me about the photographs behind you, because I'm curious. Right? Because that would probably tell me something about you and your family.
Can you see them? I've just put it up high.
Yeah, but honestly, that's maybe time for, maybe we can carry on with it. But I remember as a young salesperson, I had the chance to go into the chief finance officer's room to help repair a printer. And I ended up talking to his PA and looking in the guy's office and seeing these photographs around and picking up on what he was interested in. And by the time I got a chance to talk to the chap, I was actually really interested in his life, right? And it only took 5 minutes to make that connection, but it told me things about how to work with that person from that point onward. And it's human curiosity, I think, is what I always try to tell people.
Absolutely, Steve. Absolutely, I agree. And if we look at Penny right now, if you notice 1 second, on one of her hands, she's got hearts. She's got hearts around her neck. So, you know, picking up those small visual cues that the heart is really central to you. And that comes up really around your personality as well. That love and that affection that you show. And that's the reason why we joined BIP, because we feel like we're all part of this big family. And that is a real skill.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you to say. I think what that gets to is the core of what really drives each one of us. No matter what we're selling, there is a core set of values that drive us, and that's what we connect with as individuals, isn't it? And you know what you shared there, Steve. I mean, my core value is to connect hearts, and I connect hearts in business, and that's what I want to achieve. And so whatever you're selling, I mean, if I was selling photocopiers, if they still exist, I would still be connecting hearts, but I'm just happen to be selling this. But my values, as I walk into a room with someone, would still be exactly the same. And I suppose that's what you're saying here, Steve, about when you get to know somebody, you connect at a much more important level. Can I come on to something that really does intrigue me? I know you've done qualifications in neuroscience, Tim. Can you help me understand how that's applied in a sales environment?
Sure. And I'll invite Steve, because I'm sure you've got a view on this and as well. So neuroscience is the study of the workings of, if you like, the neurology of the brain, and what we know much more about by looking at functional MRI images. In other words, what's happening with all the chemicals by the cameras. You know what an MRI is. It looks at the brain, but a functional one shows the actual workings of the brain. Is actually, there are two things in sales. Firstly, people are motivated by fear more than they are than gain. That's a really interesting thing. So from a sales angle, sometimes that's quite difficult to figure out, well, I can't frighten. Do you remember the old IBM adage? I don't really remember that. Fear, uncertainty, doubt was one of their sort of things. Create fear, uncertainty, doubt. Well, you have to do that really subtly. And what neuroscience says is that basically the center of us, right in the center of the brain, there's the amygdala, which is part of the central limbic system, which is right in the center of the brain, and that reacts very, very quickly to emergencies. So risk is a bigger driver to people than actual gain. And what do we do as sales? We tell them how wonderful things will be. What we forget about is actually the thing that actually the brain wants to do is stay as it is. So if you're talking to somebody, if I was selling to you, Penny, my first thing is to actually make you do something to change what you're doing right now. Every sale is about change. So if you were using, I don't know, perhaps you had a certain brand of clothing you liked. And I was selling another brand of clothing, I might say, go around that aspect of making you change your mind about that clothing, or wearing certain types of clothes or something like that. And we do this in corporate sales a lot. The biggest motivator, the biggest competition to any sale is not competition, it's status quo. The brain saying, stay as I am, stay as I am, stay as I am. Well, what we've got to do is stop that in the process by trying to get people to say, actually, it's not safe to stay as I am.
Yeah.
Particularly where Steve and I both work a lot in this big thing that's happening in digital transformation, where if you're not doing or trying to transform your company or applying digital techniques, you're going to be left behind. You think about all the banks. Think about the way the banks have evolved over the last 5 years, 10 years. I applied for a bank account I think it was about 5 years ago. And they said, well, we'll need this, it'll take about a month or 2 months to do. And eventually I got one, it was fine. Now you can get one with 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because of the new technologies. And so therefore the transformation that's happened in there. So back to that neuroscience, if you think it's comfortable to stay as you are as a bank, boom, forget it. You've got to have that transformation. So that's where the neuroscience, so it's the danger bit of this. But some of these things we know about already, about the rapport.
Yeah.
One of the fundamental things that sales teaches is that when we don't know somebody, for instance, if it was the first time that Steve and I had connected together, Steve might be saying to himself, who is this guy? Do I trust him? Is he all right? The danger. And as you get to know something, that's really important for salespeople, and they know it instinctively, you know it, Penny, you do, Steve, is that judgment lowers as you get to know to somebody and say, no, he or she is okay, they're all right. And that's the brain relaxing, that central limbic system going, trying
Does it vary in people? Because I assume everybody's wonderful until they're not. Some people assume everybody's an arsehole until they're not. So is that a psychometric? Is there a tool for that? Because I think we're all very different. I am naturally a growth mindset person. I'm naturally progressive. I know things in my life will be different again next year. Hopefully not my working life, but might be in a different house, or life changes. So I imagine you're almost trying to get to that progressive person always, really, aren't you, when or that progressive element of someone.
Yeah, I think there are two things as well. It's either the old nature-nurture debate as well, that we inherently, firstly, have got our own genetic and epigenetic mechanisms around ourselves, but we're a product also of our parents and our environment and everything else that makes us either a growth mindset or not. I'm very, very lucky. My confidence is borne out by my parents being very supportive of me, whatever I've done throughout my life. Even when I failed at things.
Yeah, so it enabled you to take risk.
Yeah, I've taken bigger risk as an entrepreneur than, that my parents did, or other people, or my brother did, or my sister did. I'm very lucky. But I think, it's back to the old debate, are people made or that, are they stay in their way? I think by and large, there are people who have a natural tendency to be cautious.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, you've obviously got a life story of working in corporates and supporting corporates, but you now also are supporting business leaders of their own companies, business owners. Mm-hmm. Do you see a difference in that respect when people are, if I was selling into a corporate as opposed to selling to an entrepreneur, do you feel there's a different?
I think that there's an overriding human pattern here. A couple of patterns, and just to add to what Tim was describing there, I think there's one thing I've observed is the tendency to overuse fear or threat without juxtaposing it with a really believable best practice solution. Because if you just do that, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes for the person to readjust back to their comfort zone, and then they'll never listen to your danger or threat signal again. So you have to really have it thought through. So you have to be thoughtful and not thoughtless about how you throw these pieces of information around. I'll go back to the LinkedIn message saying, surely you must be recruiting loads of programming staff in your job as independent management consultant. And I'm sitting here thinking that was just, okay, go away, please. But the other underlying trait that I find that is common everywhere is the fact that whenever I've gone to suggest to somebody that they should change from the way that they're doing things right now, actually what that is interpreted as is a critique. It's almost like a criticism of the way that they're doing it now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And people become defensive of that. Mm. All right. So what I was taught very early days, very good line management training at IBM and HP, was that you have to earn the right to offer criticism, and people have to ask you for it, actually. Part of that process is that they say, so what do you think of my thesis? Could you help me pull it to pieces? And then they're receptive to taking on that suggestion, right? And this all boils down to, as a salesperson or as a human being, you have to spend a little bit of time, and you gain much more by asking questions than you do by going into tell mode. And I have always declined product training courses as much as I possibly could, because I always explain to people my main value is that I'm obsessed with customers. I'm so curious about what's going on in their world and in their lives. I don't want to go in leading with the latest feature of whatever product it is, or the price point, or whatever. I don't also want to go in with pre-cooked sales pitches that say, in your industry, this is happening, and if you don't do something about it, please, it's a very deeply personal, business is personal, right? And it's a deeply personal conversation that you're having. That what you're doing about your disaster recovery at the moment risks losing shareholder value in the next 6 to 9 months if you don't do something differently about it, is a criticism of that person's disaster recovery. So you better make damn sure that you've established trust with that person before you do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's nothing more annoying than unsolicited advice, is there? And I know, Tim, you come at a very human-centric, very heart thought process as well. And I love the way Steve's put that across. What are your thoughts on that as we're coming to it?
I think I agree with the Americans have this phrase, don't call the baby ugly. Which is exactly what Steve's describing there. You've got to be really careful that it's not implied as criticism. People will get defensive. I've had people look at my website and said, oh, by the way, you've got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. And Steve and I both know of people who've gone into clients and done that, and the client said, go, there's the door, use it. But what we have been finding out is using stories of other customers, a very useful way to show a hidden danger of a particular approach. So not directing the person in front of you. So that what we've heard from other customers is they've tried this, this, and this. This is what they found. So it's third party. It's nothing to do with what I'm saying about you.
Absolutely.
What you're trying to bring is the two together. So somebody like a parable can see that they're involved with it. So, right, that's very similar to me. But you're not directly criticizing, you're just saying this is what they found.
Create something that's relatable. I remember when I was bravely learning to do public speaking, we had, 400 or 500 people in the room of the academy in London every month. I'd never been a public speaker. Thomas used to be the front, and then he went off and did an Asia trip for 5 weeks, and I did. And I got off, and I think I did all right. I think I was quite humble and everything. And the first person that approached me was, I'm a speaker trainer. Would you like me to teach you how to speak? And it was like, I don't ever want to see you in my life again.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about picking the right moment.
Am I that crap?
No. So pick the right moment. But that's down to our emotional intelligence. And ultimately, I feel that a lot of what we have talked about today is, we're living in a digital world. We could automate everything. We can be hands off. All these things, but we have to remember it's about people, and the best way is to improve our emotional intelligence and really plug into that. It's been an amazing talk today. Before I sort of finish off, is there anything sort of left undone, either of you, that you feel that we should have got across to help our audience?
No, just stay online afterwards and tell me about those photographs. No, I'm joking.
Well, I would very proudly tell you about them.
Thanks for the opportunity, Penny. It's really great to be on.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Thank you both for inviting me.
Somebody said to me, a brilliant man who was on Academy called Ronald Weparis, and he was in Holland, and he said to Thomas and I back in 2003, is the greatest thing that we're all going to be facing is an attention war. And the hardest thing is to get someone's attention. And I have had both your attention for 45 minutes. And anybody that's listened to us today has given us their attention. And so thank you very much, because to me, that's the greatest privilege. And I really appreciate it. And I think there's huge value in what you share. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I absolutely loved it.
Thanks, Penny.
Thank you.